The television courtroom had never seen disrespect explode this violently against a man who had sacrificed nearly everything for his country. Karen Daniels, a 48-year-old luxury real estate agent known for her designer wardrobe, expensive white BMW, and arrogant attitude, sat confidently in Judge Judy's courtroom, believing she was about to crush another helpless client. Across from her sat James Crawford, a 67-year-old retired Marine veteran whose tired hands held tightly onto a folder filled with his late wife's photographs and property papers. What unfolded over the next few minutes would become one of the most unforgettable courtroom confrontations ever shared online, spreading across social media with millions of people outraged over the way Karen treated a decorated veteran. But this situation became far bigger than a simple lawsuit. Karen didn't just lose a legal argument. She didn't just leave embarrassed. Judge Judy completely dismantled her reputation in front of the entire country, and within days, Karen's career and public image collapsed in ways she never imagined possible. Before we get into the exact moment Karen crossed a line so outrageous that it triggered Judge Judy's most furious reaction ever captured on television, make sure to support this video if you believe veterans deserve respect and people who exploit others should face consequences for their actions. Subscribe for more courtroom stories where arrogance and entitlement finally meet justice. What happened in this courtroom reminded millions of people that karma arrives fast when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. James Crawford never expected to spend his retirement sitting in front of television cameras. After serving 24 years in the United States Marine Corps, including combat tours in Vietnam and Desert Storm, Jim had spent decades carrying emotional scars most people could never understand. He had earned both a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with valor, honors that represented courage, sacrifice, and survival. But despite everything he endured overseas, the hardest battle of his life began after his wife Mary passed away from cancer 8 months earlier. Mary had been his entire world, the person who helped him survive sleepless nights and painful memories after war. Losing her shattered him emotionally. The final responsibility left behind was selling the small suburban home Mary inherited from her parents, a property worth roughly $380,000. Jim simply wanted closure and peace. He wanted to handle the sale honestly and respectfully in honor of the woman he loved. That was when Karen Daniels entered his life. Karen presented herself as an elite professional who specialized in premium listings. She talked confidently about marketing strategies, fast sales, and top-level service. Jim, raised on military values, where contracts and promises actually meant something, trusted her completely. He signed an agreement giving Karen a 6% commission, which meant she would earn over $22. Salvin, once the house sold, what Jim didn't realize was that Karen had built a reputation targeting elderly clients who were grieving, confused, or too intimidated to challenge her. Behind her polished appearance was someone who understood exactly how to manipulate vulnerable people while hiding behind legal paperwork and intimidation tactics. After signing the contract, Karen barely did any real work. Over 3 months, she posted only 2 photos of the property online, skipped 4 scheduled open houses, ignored repeated phone calls, and failed to respond to numerous emails asking for updates. Jim waited patiently at first because patience and discipline had been part of his entire life. But eventually, he started noticing that nothing meaningful was happening. The home wasn't being marketed properly, and Karen always seemed annoyed whenever he requested information. When Jim finally appeared at her office to ask questions face to face, Karen brushed him aside as though he were inconveniencing her. She barely looked away from her phone, while insisting expensive homes simply took longer to sell. But Jim had already begun speaking with other real estate agents and researching her behavior. He discovered that her premium service amounted to almost no actual effort at all. Politely and respectfully, Jim requested to end the contract so he could work with another realtor willing to actually help him sell the property. That was when Karen completely changed. Her professional smile disappeared instantly. Instead of releasing him from the agreement, she demanded the entire commission anyway, along with an additional $8. Elzone, she claimed, were marketing expenses despite doing virtually no marketing. Soon afterward, Jim received a threatening legal letter from Karen's attorney filled with intimidating language about lawsuits, credit damage, and financial penalties. For a retired veteran surviving on a fixed military pension, the demand for nearly $30,000 was devastating. But even more painful than the money was the betrayal itself. Jim had spent his life believing integrity mattered. Karen represented the exact opposite of everything he stood for: manipulation, greed, intimidation, and exploitation. Karen Daniels had perfected this behavior over many years. She specifically targeted elderly homeowners because she believed they were easier to pressure and less likely to fight back. She reportedly kept detailed notes about clients' emotional situations and financial weaknesses, studying who could be manipulated most effectively. Previous complaints had been quietly buried with expensive attorneys and settlements before any serious punishment could happen. So when Karen agreed to appear on Judge Judy, she felt completely untouchable. For weeks, she prepared what she believed would be a flawless legal argument. She gathered internet articles about contracts, practiced her courtroom explanations, and selected a designer outfit that projected confidence and authority. She bragged to friends that she was going to embarrass an elderly client on national television while proving Judge Judy didn't understand real estate law. What Karen never realized was that Judge Judy had already spotted multiple inconsistencies and obvious lies in her paperwork before the case even began. The day of filming started normally. The courtroom audience settled into their seats, expecting another routine dispute. Jim Crawford entered first, wearing a modest gray suit with an American flag pin on his jacket. Even at 67 years old, his military posture remained obvious. He stood tall despite visible nervousness, clutching his documents carefully. Karen entered moments later with the confidence of someone walking onto a stage she believed she controlled. She wore a perfectly tailored Chanel suit and carried an expensive designer briefcase. She didn't even acknowledge Jim as she passed him. Judge Judy opened proceedings with her usual sharp efficiency, summarizing the dispute before allowing Jim to explain what happened. His testimony was calm and respectful. His voice occasionally cracked with emotion as he spoke about losing his wife and trying to honor her memory through the sale of the home. He carefully listed the missed appointments, unanswered calls, and lack of effort Karen displayed. When Jim briefly referenced his military service, it wasn't for sympathy. He simply explained that honesty and integrity mattered deeply to him because of how he had lived his entire life. In the Marines, he said quietly, "Your word means something." Karen reacted immediately with visible contempt. She rolled her eyes repeatedly while Jim spoke. She smirked when his emotions surfaced, discussing his wife. She sighed loudly enough for microphones to capture her irritation. Every expression communicated the same message. She viewed him as weak and unimportant. Judge Judy noticed all of it. As Karen finally began presenting her side, she interrupted before being fully invited to speak. She launched into a condescending explanation about contracts and business obligations, waving internet printouts as though she were lecturing the courtroom. "This is just buyer's remorse," she claimed dismissively. "He signed a contract and now wants to avoid responsibility." Then Karen crossed the first major line. "Honestly," she scoffed, "I don't understand what his personal sob story has to do with contract law." Several audience members reacted immediately in disbelief. Judge Judy's expression darkened. When Jim attempted to answer one of Karen's accusations, Karen spoke over him again, louder this time. "Please," she snapped impatiently. "I'm trying to explain reality." Judge Judy cut in sharply. "Miss Daniels, he is allowed to speak in my courtroom." Karen sighed dramatically and muttered under her breath, like a disrespectful teenager being scolded. Then Judge Judy began asking detailed questions about Karen's actual marketing efforts. Karen struggled to provide meaningful answers. She blamed market conditions, timing issues, and vague business challenges. Every excuse sounded weaker than the last. That was when Jim quietly added something that changed everything. "Your Honor," he said softly, "I just expected honesty. During my years in the Marines, we were taught that when you promise something, you follow through." Karen laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh, a mocking laugh. "Oh, please," she said while making air quotes with her fingers. "The soldier card, how original. Everyone who loses an argument suddenly becomes Captain America, trying to guilt people with military service." The entire courtroom froze. Jim looked stunned, deeply hurt, but restrained by decades of military discipline. Audience members stared in disbelief. Even the courtroom staff looked disturbed. Then everyone looked at Judge Judy. Her face transformed completely. Her voice became terrifyingly calm. "Miss Daniels," Judge Judy said quietly, "would you like to repeat that for the record?" Still blinded by arrogance, Karen doubled down. "I said he's playing the soldier card. People use military service for sympathy all the time." Judge Judy leaned forward slowly. "The soldier card?" she repeated coldly. 24 years of military service. Vietnam, Desert Storm, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star with valor. That's a card to you? Karen finally started realizing she had made a catastrophic mistake, but pride kept her talking. "I'm just saying it's irrelevant to contracts." Judge Judy stared directly into her eyes. "Tell me, Miss Daniels," she asked, "what exactly have you sacrificed for this country?" Karen answered without thinking. "I pay my taxes." Laughter broke out across the courtroom. Judge Judy then dismantled Karen piece by piece. She exposed the absurdity of demanding $22,000 for 2 Facebook posts. She listed every missed open house, every ignored call, every excuse. Karen tried repeatedly to interrupt, but Judge Judy shut her down instantly each time. Then Judge Judy made the case personal. She spoke about her own father serving in World War II, about soldiers watching friends die, about veterans carrying nightmares for decades after war ends, about sacrifice that most civilians will never truly understand. "Jim Crawford is exactly like my father," Judge Judy said powerfully. "He bled for this country while people like you built comfortable lives, protected by freedoms you never had to fight for." Karen sat frozen, tears beginning to destroy her makeup as reality finally crashed down around her. Judge Judy stood from her chair. The courtroom became completely silent. "Here is my ruling," she announced. "You receive 0 commission. 0. And you will pay Mr. Crawford $10,000 in damages. $5,000 for failing your contractual duties. $5,000 for emotional distress caused by your exploitation and disgraceful behavior." Karen tried protesting desperately. "That's not fair," Judge Judy exploded. "Fair?" she thundered. "This man spent 24 years defending the freedoms you take for granted every single day. He sacrificed peace, safety, and friends while you worried about commission checks and luxury handbags. Do not lecture me about fairness when you don't understand basic human decency." The audience burst into applause. Judge Judy pointed directly at Karen. "You are a predator. You targeted a grieving widower because you believed he was vulnerable. You exploited trust, grief, and confusion for profit. Then you mocked military service in my courtroom." Finally, Judge Judy slammed down her gavel. "Case dismissed. Get out." Karen stumbled from the courtroom, humiliated, crying uncontrollably while cameras captured every second of her collapse. But the most emotional moment came afterward. Jim Crawford slowly stood and gave Judge Judy a respectful military salute. For the first time in her television career, Judge Judy returned it. The courtroom rose in a standing ovation. That image became legendary online. Within hours, the clip exploded across social media. Millions praised Judge Judy for defending veterans and standing against predatory behavior. Veterans organizations applauded her response. Reaction videos flooded TikTok and YouTube. The hashtag #RespectOurVeterans trended everywhere. Meanwhile, Karen Daniels' life collapsed. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Multiple former clients came forward with complaints. Her brokerage fired her immediately. Her social media accounts were overwhelmed with backlash until she deleted everything. Even her marriage reportedly fell apart after the video went viral. Jim Crawford's story ended very differently. His property sold quickly to a buyer who specifically wanted to honor a veteran. Supporters raised thousands of dollars for him, much of which he donated to veteran charities. He became a respected speaker at military events and received countless messages from veterans thanking him for representing them with dignity. The case became more than a courtroom argument. It became a reminder that respect matters, integrity matters, and exploiting vulnerable people eventually carries consequences. Because in Judge Judy's courtroom and in life, arrogance only survives until it finally meets someone willing to stand up against it.